She wasn't supposed to survive. Not in that world. Not in that palace. She was just a girl, born far from the golden halls of Constantinople, in a quiet village in Ruthenia. Her name was Alexandra, and for a time, she had a simple life. Until the day the raiders came. They stormed her village, burned everything, and chained her like an animal. She was sold, traded, and finally delivered as a gift to the greatest empire in the world, the Ottoman Empire. There, in the heart of the Topkapi Palace, she was given a new name, Hurrem, the Joyful One. A cruel joke, maybe, for a girl who had just lost everything. She was thrown into the imperial harem, where hundreds of women lived under silk and shadow, waiting for the Sultan to notice them. But this wasn't just a harem. It was a battlefield, because in the Ottoman court, beauty was a weapon. Whispers were deadly, and only one woman could rise. No one expected her to survive. She wasn't royal. She wasn't noble. She was a slave. And yet, within just a few years, she ruled it all. The women, the secrets, even the Sultan's heart. This is the story of how a stolen girl became the most powerful woman in the empire, and how she destroyed anyone who dared to stand in her way. The real war wasn't on the battlefield. It wasn't fought with swords or cannons. It was fought with perfume, poisoned words, and perfect timing. And it happened behind the palace doors, where the world never looked. Welcome to the imperial harem. To outsiders, it looked like a paradise. Marble floors, gold ceilings, fountains that never stopped flowing. But for the women who lived there, it was a prison wrapped in silk. At any time, more than 300 women lived inside the Sultan's harem. They came from every corner of the empire: Greece, Circassia, Albania, Persia. Some were sent as gifts. Others were taken. All of them had the same goal: to be the one the Sultan chose, the one he returned to, the one who gave him a son. Because inside the harem, giving birth to a prince meant everything. It meant power. It meant security. It meant you and your child might one day rule the empire. But there was a catch. Only one woman could rise. And the others? They'd be cast aside or crushed. Above them all stood one figure, the Valide Sultan, the Sultan's mother. She controlled everything inside the harem. What the women wore, what they ate, who saw the Sultan, and who didn't. She was the queen without a crown, and her word was law. But even she couldn't stop what was coming. Because when Hurrem entered the harem, she didn't just want the Sultan's love. She wanted the whole system. While others smiled and waited, Hurrem studied. She learned who was favored, who was weak, who could be turned. She knew this wasn't about beauty. It was about control. And slowly, she began to take it, room by room, heart by heart. The harem wasn't built for women like her, too smart, too ambitious, too bold. But that's exactly why she would survive. And the others? They wouldn't. She wasn't the most beautiful woman in the harem. She didn't come from noble blood. And yet, she did the impossible. She changed the Sultan. Suleiman the Magnificent wasn't just a ruler. He was the ruler. At the height of the Ottoman Empire, his word was law from Budapest to Baghdad. He commanded the greatest military in the world and held the fate of millions in his hands. But behind palace walls, he was still a man. And one woman would capture not just his heart, but his mind. Her name was Hurrem. She didn't come to him like the others, with perfume, practiced smiles, and quiet obedience. She came laughing, teasing. She challenged him, questioned him, even mocked him, politely. And Suleiman was fascinated. He began calling for her more often, at first once a week, then every night. Soon, Hurrem wasn't just a visitor to the Sultan's chamber. She became the only one allowed in. What happened next shocked the empire, because Suleiman did something no sultan had ever done before. He stopped seeing any other woman. He made Hurrem his exclusive consort, breaking centuries of tradition. In a harem where even the most favored woman could be replaced in a heartbeat, Hurrem became untouchable. And it didn't stop there. The two began exchanging letters, intimate, poetic, philosophical. He called her my spring, my joy, and the one who holds my heart. She wrote back with fiery wit and delicate devotion. Those letters still exist. Over 40 of them. In them, you don't see a sultan and a slave. You see two people, two minds, falling in love, across silk and shadow. But this wasn't just love. This was transformation. Under Hurrem's influence, Suleiman became a more introspective ruler. He pursued grand legal reforms, supported the arts, and embraced diplomacy more deeply. Even his most trusted viziers noticed. She wasn't just changing him behind closed doors. She was changing the empire. And that terrified people. The court whispered. They called her the witch, the sorceress, the poison inside the palace. Because they knew what Hurrem wanted she got. But she didn't use spells. She used intelligence, charm, patience. And she knew, if you have the Sultan's heart, you don't need a throne. You are the throne. In a world ruled by men, Hurrem didn't just survive. She conquered, with laughter, letters, and love. And for the other women of the harem, it was the beginning of the end. Because once Hurrem had the Sultan, nothing, not tradition, not rivals, not even blood, would stop her next move. And her next move would change the empire forever. Before Hurrem, there was Mahidevran. She was the Sultan's first great love, graceful, powerful, and the mother of his firstborn son, Prince Mustafa. For years, Mahidevran was untouchable. She held the Sultan's favor. She was respected, even feared, in the harem. And when she gave birth to a strong, healthy boy, everyone believed her place was secure. But then, Hurrem arrived, and everything began to unravel. At first, Mahidevran dismissed the red-haired girl from Ruthenia. A newcomer, a toy, a passing distraction. After all, how could a slave replace her? But the nights grew longer. The Sultan stopped calling for Mahidevran, and soon, whispers began to spread. Suleiman had a new favorite. It wasn't just about affection anymore. Hurrem was becoming something else, something dangerous. She wasn't just warm and clever, she was strategic. She knew how to wait. She never confronted Mahidevran, never lashed out. But every time the Sultan looked at Hurrem, Mahidevran felt herself vanishing. And then, Mahidevran snapped. One night, in a fit of jealous rage, she attacked Hurrem. No guards, no warnings, just rage, exploding in fists and fury. Hurrem was beaten, bloodied, bruised, but she didn't scream. She didn't fight back. She simply stood, silent, shattered, but proud. And when Suleiman saw what had happened, he didn't comfort Mahidevran. He didn't ask for her side of the story. He turned away from her forever. In the Ottoman harem, physical violence between concubines wasn't just frowned upon. It was fatal to a woman's reputation. And Mahidevran had crossed the line. She expected Hurrem to retaliate, to plot revenge. But Hurrem did something far worse. She forgave her. Openly, calmly, with a soft voice and a wounded smile. The message was clear. You hit me and I still won. And that was the death blow. Soon after, Mahidevran was banished from the main palace. She and Prince Mustafa were sent to live in a provincial court, technically a promotion for the young prince. But for Mahidevran, it was exile. She lost her position. She lost her power. She lost the man she once believed would love her forever. And Hurrem, she remained. No longer just a favorite. No longer just a witty girl with bright eyes and bold laughter. She was now the woman who could take down a queen without ever raising her hand. In the harem, power wasn't about how loud you were. It was about who the Sultan listened to. Mahidevran had once ruled through love and legacy. But Hurrem ruled through silence and strategy. And that was just her first victory, because the woman who could outplay Mahidevran was only getting started. She didn't have soldiers. She didn't carry a sword. And yet, the harem belonged to her. Because Hurrem Sultan didn't need an army. She had something far more powerful. Secrets, spies, and fear. After Mahidevran's fall, the message was clear. Hurrem was no longer just the Sultan's favorite. She was the queen in all but name. But survival in the harem wasn't about love. It was about control. And Hurrem knew exactly how to take it. She began placing her own people throughout the palace, from loyal handmaidens to eunuchs who owed her their positions. Every corridor, every whisper, every glance reported back to her. She created a web, tight invisible and lethal. No one spoke freely. No one moved unobserved. If you wanted to speak to the Sultan, you went through her. If you wanted protection, favor, or even to stay alive, you owed her. Within months, her network rivaled even that of the Valide Sultan, the Sultan's own mother. Some said she controlled the harem more completely than any woman since the empire began. And what made it terrifying? She did it without a crown. But not everyone got the message. One night, a new concubine arrived. Young, beautiful, Gulnahal. She was confident, too confident, and the rumors spread fast. She had caught the Sultan's eye. She had smiled a little too long. Her silk robes lingered in the wrong hallway, and Hurrem noticed. But she didn't scream. She didn't attack. She invited Gulnahal to tea. The meeting took place in one of Hurrem's private chambers. Servants stood silent. Guards waited outside, and the young girl sat, smiling nervously across from the most dangerous woman in the empire. What happened next wasn't recorded in the palace archives, but stories survived. Whispers passed through generations of harem women. Hurrem never raised her voice. She didn't threaten violence. She didn't need to. She spoke slowly, softly. She reminded Gulnahal where she came from. She listed the names of the girls who had tried and failed. She described, in chilling detail, what happens to those who overstep. And then, finally, she leaned in and whispered a single sentence. Don't even try. That night, Gulnahal packed her things. Days later, she left the palace, quietly, shamefully, and without ever seeing the Sultan again. And the rest of the harem? They got the message loud and clear. This wasn't just Hurrem's palace anymore. It was her empire, in a world of silk and shadows. She didn't rule with fear. She ruled with precision. And now that she had control of the harem, there was only one thing left to take: the throne itself. By now everyone knew. Hurrem didn't just want the Sultan's heart. She wanted the future. And in the Ottoman Empire, that meant one thing: getting her son on the throne. But one boy stood in the way. Prince Mustafa. He wasn't just the Sultan's eldest son. He was beloved. By the army. By the people. Even by foreign ambassadors, who called him the perfect heir. But Hurrem knew perfection was dangerous, because if Mustafa became Sultan, her sons would die. It was tradition. When a new Sultan rose, his brothers were executed. No exceptions. Not even for the children of the woman who ruled the harem. So Hurrem made her move. With her son-in-law, Grand Vizier Rustam Pasha, by her side, she began to play a new game. Political chess, with human lives. The whispers started. Mustafa was too ambitious. Mustafa was planning rebellion. Letters were discovered. Letters supposedly proving he was gathering troops to overthrow his own father. No one knows if they were real. But one man believed them, Suleiman. And in 1553, on a military campaign far from the capital, Suleiman made the most devastating decision of his reign. He summoned Mustafa to his tent. There were no accusations, no trial, no chance to speak. Mustafa was strangled with a silk cord by his own father's guards. The empire was shattered. The people mourned. Even the soldiers wept. But in the harem, Hurrem had won. There were no more rivals. And when Suleiman died years later, it was Hurrem's son, Selim, who inherited the empire. She began as a slave, and ended as the mother of an emperor. But her legacy, that was far more terrifying than her rise. History calls her a manipulator, a seductress, a schemer who poisoned her way to the top. But the truth? Hurrem Sultan was a survivor. She shattered every rule in the Ottoman Empire. Born a Christian slave, she became the legal wife of the Sultan, something no concubine had ever done. She was the first woman to live in the palace her entire life, the first to hold political influence at the heart of the empire, the first to write letters to foreign kings, like the King of Poland and the Shah of Persia. She rewrote the role of women in power before the world even had a name for it. And when she died, she didn't disappear. She left behind a new dynasty, one that ruled through blood, ambition, and quiet whispers in candlelit halls. Her son, Selim too, inherited the throne. But the empire? It had already belonged to her. Bell, if you enjoyed this story, Subscribe for more real-life palace intrigue. Because in history, the shadows often speak louder than the crowns. If you found this story haunting, subscribe for more. Because history doesn't just repeat itself, it remembers.